Hello, everyone. We're just going to wait a couple minutes to collect a few more folks, and then we'll get started. And if folks have questions that they want to, we're going to do a presentation and invite questions. If people have questions, they can put them in the chat box to the hosts. Anybody else in the waiting room, Jeremy?
Moment.
We'll just give it one more minute, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Make sure to give everyone what they need in an appropriate amount of time. Okay, well, why don't we go ahead and get started? Want to thank everyone for joining us today. My name is Colin Parent. I'm the Executive Director and General Counsel with Circulate San Diego. And we're here to do an online media briefing for a report that we published this morning called A Better Coastal Commission. If folks are not already familiar with Circulate, we are a local nonprofit based in the San Diego area. We do a lot of research and advocacy around public transportation, safe streets, and affordable housing. We've done a lot of research and advocacy around state housing laws, and this is an example of one of those reports that we're going to be sharing with you today. I'm going to provide some introductory remarks. My colleague, William Moore, who is the policy counsel at Circulate and the lead author of this report, will also provide some information about the report. Then we'll open it up to questions. And then the report itself is available online at circulatesd.org/bettercoast. And we're sending out a press release with additional details and a link to that, I think, presently. So as we begin, let's go ahead and begin. So today, Circulate San Diego, we're releasing our latest report, A Better Coastal Commission. The Coastal Commission is a statewide public agency in California, and it has a very important mandate to protect our coastal habitat and coastal access. It is also responsible for reviewing many types of housing proposals near the coast. Unfortunately, over the years, the Coastal Commission has delayed or denied numerous proposals to build affordable homes. As housing prices rise, the coast is at risk of becoming an exclusive enclave for only the most affluent in California. In our report today, we identify a number of examples where the Coastal Commission has delayed or denied affordable housing. And importantly, in each of these instances, the affordable housing was proposed on land that was already zoned for multifamily housing. And that zoning itself had already been approved by the Coastal Commission. Yet when the affordable housing was actually proposed to be built, it was met with delay and obstruction. And these delays and denials of affordable housing by the Coastal Commission, they run counter to California's goals to increase the supply of affordable homes. The California Legislature, they have passed a variety of policies in recent years to streamline approvals of affordable homes. And the resistance to those policies by the Coastal Commission has exacerbated California's affordability crisis. Our report recommends some modest procedural reforms for the Coastal Commission that can help it come on board with other laws in California that are intended to increase the availability of affordable homes. And with these reforms, the Coastal Commission can continue to protect our coastal resources and truly make the coast accessible to Californians of all incomes. And now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, William Moore, who's going to be talking about some of the particular items in the report, and then we'll open it up to questions in the chat for folks who have them.
Hi, everybody. I'm Will Moore. I am policy counsel for Circulate San Diego. I am also lead author of the Better Coastal Commission report alongside my good friend and CEO, Colin Parent. I think the first thing I'm going to do with you is go over here and do a little screen share. And we're going to bring the report up. So we're talking about a real document here. Share that. Can everybody see that? Excellent. So this is, you can see the URL here, a Better Coastal Commission. You can also type in Better Coastal. And it'll direct right to that.
It's better Coast.
Better Coast. Better Coast, and it'll direct right to that spot. And you can
we'll add another redirect. We'll add another redirect later this afternoon.
You can download the PDF, or you can look at the mobile first version of the report. I think the PDF is prettier, so that's what we're going to take a look at. So this is the cover of the report. It is a 36-page report. It details, among other things, the history of the Coastal Commission, the purpose of the Coastal Commission, and the values that the Coastal Commission is meant to uphold. We also have sections that go over the procedures of the Coastal Commission and how they approach their work generally and the structure of that organization. And then we go on, after setting up a basic familiarity for the reader with what this organization does, we go on to cite examples of where we have seen that either they don't live up to the goals set forth in the Coastal Act, or don't live up to, in some cases, some of the things they say themselves about their goals. And what we find is there is denial, delay, vagueness, and really just a hostility towards the approval of housing, and a hostility towards the idea that they should allow clear timelines, clear rules that can be obeyed that would actually encourage people to even try to make housing in the coastal area. So that's one of the goals of the report. We also have the next section of the report goes into ways in which the Coastal Commission, which is supposed to be one of our great bulwark environmental steward agencies in the state of California, fails in some cases to live up to that environmental goal, to their need to protect from climate change, their need to provide for alternative methods of transportation. So this report really comes out of years of discussion and research about whether the Coastal Commission is living up to its goals. And what we're looking to do here is to try to make a better Coastal Commission. This is not saying we don't need a Coastal Commission. This is saying we absolutely do need a Coastal Commission, but we need one that does the work that is set out for it in the Coastal Act. So I'm going to go through, I'm not going to read the whole report to you, but I am going to scroll through a little bit. There we go. The acknowledgements, that's fun. So the table of contents is a good place to start. The housing crisis is palpable throughout the state. The beating heart of the housing crisis in the state of California is the coastal area. It starts more segregated at the coast, and then as you need to have more of a need for affordability, you move inland. And this is a thing that, as Californians, we all instinctively know. I think many of your viewers and readers and listeners will know instinctively that if they don't already live in the coast, they're probably not going to. I know that's the way I feel, and as indeed we all have friends that have to move out of town, out of the state all the time because of the housing crisis. So we do have the housing crisis. The state legislature has attempted to address the housing crisis in recent years with some success. We need more success, but with some success by providing clear timelines and clear standards with which projects, when they are proposed, can be evaluated and set into motion so they can actually get built so people can live in local jurisdictions previously, there was a lot of ability to say, yes, we want housing, but this particular project isn't good enough. This particular project isn't good enough. And what ended up happening is you had long delays and not enough housing, which is how we got ourselves in the housing crisis in the first place. Now, the problem we face is that a lot of those pieces of legislation, such as density bonus legislation, which we'll talk a little bit about in a minute, ADU legislation, the Housing Accountability Act, do not have full application in the coastal area because they each have a savings clause where the coastal area is exempt from those acts, which means that the city of Del Mar, the city of Huntington Beach, the coastal areas of places like San Diego, Santa Cruz, and Los Angeles don't have to obey the same rules as the rest of those large cities and an Escondido or a Anaheim. So we have that difference in the law, but we also have, as we all know, a difference in what is actually at the coast. So let's go down a little bit and talk about the statistics. Now, I said that we are all very much aware as Californians of the difference of affordability and exclusivity in the coastal area, but it's not just our observations. That's borne out by the statistics. So your instinct is borne out by the facts. Here's a chart from the legislative analyst's office with the legislature nonpartisan group that shows that in the coastal counties you have high housing costs. Inland, it gets more affordable. So if you have a job that's paying you $25 an hour to work in a hotel at the coast, you're probably not going to be able to afford to live at the coast, and you're going to have to drive inland to find a place to live. So we also have evidence that segregation is worse in the coast. The coastal area is about 25%, about 50% wider than the rest of California, and is more expensive and wider than parts immediately outside the coastal zone. So it really is the coastal zone that creates the beating heart of our housing crisis in the state of California. And that is because we have a state agency, the Coastal Commission, that is supposed to guarantee access for all Californians under the Coastal Act and supposed to protect our environment. And that's what we all think it does. And so what we're looking into here is do they live up to that? So as we go through the history and purpose of the Coastal Commission, this report goes into detail about where the Coastal Commission came from, how it came to be, what its status is now, what its powers are. And then we go into overview of coastal procedures. Not get into that right now. It is necessary to get into the guts to really understand the examples, but it's here so that the rest of the report makes sense. It's not the heart of the report, it's kind of the scaffold. And then starting on page 16, we really get to the heart of it. And we have 5 examples of housing projects that were in particular representative ways don't effectuate the intent of the legislature in implementing our recent housing reforms, or create delays or unnecessary hurdles for projects that were already approved at the local jurisdictions. Now, it's important to note that for every one of these projects that we cite as examples, the city of Los Angeles, the city of Santa Cruz, all of these local jurisdictions have already approved these projects, and these are on appeal before the Coastal Commission. Not only that, but the local jurisdictions appealed these projects under both the laws of the local jurisdiction, Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, Santa Cruz, wherever it happens to be, and those rules were all approved by the Coastal Commission itself because that has to be done in the coastal zone. So this is after years of permitting already got an approval. And so what we see is our examples. And they start here on page 17 with this Pisani place. And I don't think I'm going to do all of them for the purposes of this conference because I spent a lot more time figuring out how to write this clearly than I spent thinking about how to do this press conference clearly. And we don't have time for me to just read that, and it would be boring. But for example, the Pisani Place item is 8 units, 3 of them deed restricted affordable, that the Coastal Commission said, oh, it doesn't match the character of the neighborhood community. It's too big. It's a couple feet too high. Even though all of those rules, all of those parameters, the height, the setbacks, and we're talking about 11 feet. It's not that much. Were all approved under the existing rules of the local jurisdiction and the local coastal program. So the vagueness of something like, oh, it doesn't match the community character, that doesn't match up with the intention of the legislature, and no other jurisdiction in the state of California can get away with that. And so this is an example of the Coastal Commission not taking that direction from the legislature seriously and implementing it. Now, also, notably with this Pisani Place example, you have the Coastal Commission saying in another part of their report rejecting it that, oh, the affordable housing wasn't good enough. Well, the folks who were going to live in the affordable housing, which was going to be deed restricted for 55 years, those folks all wrote them in support of the project. They live there now. They would live in the new spot. And they said, I support, this is the top of this page, I support this and oppose the appeal. I'm one of the 3 tenants that qualified for the low-income housing and lived on the site for 32 years. Those people are not going to be able to stay there now, unless they want to live in a place that's, run down and extremely old. They preferred the new project, but the Coastal Commission said, those real affordable housing residents that are in front of us right now, we don't care about as much as our ability to say we care about theoretical affordable housing, and this affordable housing isn't good enough. And that's one of the things we see recurring is a preference for theoretical affordability over projects that are actually being proposed that could actually get built, that somebody actually wants to pay to build. So that is your Pisani Place example. City of Los Angeles, Sunset Boulevard, somewhat different situation. This one is 39 homes, some of them deed restricted, 8 of them deed restricted, so 20% of the project. Approved at the city of Los Angeles, came on appeal, took 29 months, 2.5 years, and no issue was found over the course of that 29 months. And you'll see at the top of this page, there's an abandoned Burger King. This is supposed to be nearly 40 homes, 8 deed restricted affordable. Sat here for 2.5 years like this, while the Coastal Commission did nothing really. Just sat on this application, went back and forth with the developer, went through these negotiations, talked about things that were outside of the scope of the appeal. After an approval at the local level, an abandoned Burger King sitting in the middle of your neighborhood while an agency negotiates based on really standards that no one could have predicted in advance. And the failure to take seriously the harm done to a neighborhood when an abandoned Burger King sits there and nobody can do anything with it because the process is paralyzed. Failure to acknowledge that is one of our critiques of the Coastal Commission, and that prevents people from having access to housing in the coastal area. Not going to do all of these. I do love the Riverfront project example. It's a big project in Santa Cruz. This is one where the Coastal Commission passed a local a local coastal plan in the city of Santa Cruz, approved use of density bonus in that local coastal plan, goes around bragging to everybody about how great this local coastal plan is because it includes density bonus. Well, what happens when somebody actually tries to use that density bonus? At the city level, before the approval happened, the Coastal Commission reached out, wrote a letter that's linked here in the report, opposing the approval of this project because it used the density bonus law that was set forth in the local coastal plan, but they didn't like how it worked. They didn't like some of the details in it, even though it clearly, no dispute, complied with the law. This came before them notably a couple months later. The city of Santa Cruz, to their credit, approved the project anyway. This came before them a couple months later, and when there were teeth and there were consequences to their actions and their perspectives, they weren't able to find any issues or reasons to oppose it. I think it still got a couple votes against, but they made all the same complaints. So this is an example where we're saying the folks at the Coastal Commission say, oh, if we just did these local coastal plans and put the density bonus in them, then that would take care of the problem. This is evidence that they don't really mean that. They are going to reach out and try to undercut the value of these statewide legislation like density bonus, even if they manage to get, if they're forced to put it in a coastal plan. So what this illustrates is we need clear standards applied to the Coastal Commission. They have a reputation, kind of an ethos. We don't do box checking. And so clear standards are not something they're interested in. But we've tried doing it their way for 50 years. And the results of the coast are more segregation, more exclusivity, and it's a harder place to live. And you and I both know that if we don't live there right now, we're probably not going to. So that's the theme of the housing part of the report. We have laws passed by the state legislature and policies that we as Californians have announced to the world, made the rest of the state abide by. We need clearer timelines and clearer rules, and the Coastal Commission resists at every turn, even when they don't really have grounds to. So what we need is either a massive change on the attitude of the Coastal Commission towards their mission for creating coastal access, or we need for the legislature to step in and say, we've asked you nicely a couple of times. We're going to actually put in some clear rules here. And so that is why we at Circulate have sponsored, for example, AB 2560, which would apply density bonus to the coastal zone. There are a couple of other proposed statutes this year that have gotten watered down as they went through the process. Senator Blakespear had one that was to improve the procedural methods at the Coastal Commission. The Coastal Commission lobbied hard against those. She had one that that applied the ADU laws to the Coastal Commission. Coastal Commission successfully lobbied hard against those. It is somewhat odd that we have a state agency lobbying the legislature for their own power with taxpayer money, but that's kind of a side issue, so we're not going to dwell too much on that. But I do want to say this report isn't just about housing, because the goals of the Coastal Commission from the Coastal Act are not just housing, they are access to the coast and protection of the environment. So how do we do when we look at protection of the environment? Well, what we find is starts on page 25. We have an additional section on climate change and transportation in the coastal zone. the largest contributor in the coastal area to climate change is A, people having to drive a long way to get to their jobs at the coast, and B, just auto emissions. And so, what do we do when we try to put in other ways for people to get around? Well, in West Point Loma Boulevard here in San Diego, there is a bike lane that gets to the coastal zone and suddenly disappears. And that's because when the city of San Diego tried to extend that bike lane through this corridor, which is a mile from the ocean, the Coastal Commission said, no, you need to update your entire local coastal plan for that neighborhood, or you can't make this little change just to draw the stripes on the road and put in some flexi posts for a bike lane. And that kind of bureaucratic stasis. Now, when you ask to build some extra lanes on a road, that discretion gets used really quickly. But when you ask for it for a bike lane, you don't get the same sort of thing. So you have to ask yourself, was that something an environmental steward would do? Our environmental champion, with our with the green halo we all think that the Coastal Commission has, and when we look closely, that green halo is a little bit tarnished by decisions like this one. There's another example in the city of Oceanside. Last year, the Coast Highway Incentive District, the city of Oceanside proposed this plan to improve this coast highway area, to make it easier to get up and down, to make it so people could bike around and really enjoy the coast in a different way and get to the coast in a different way. And much to a lot of people's surprise, they insisted that the city of Oceanside go back and redo this plan in a way that used an outdated standard that encouraged car traffic and encouraged more auto emissions, and that notably the legislature had said back 10 years ago in 2013 that that was no longer an appropriate standard to apply in the CEQA context. Now, CEQA being the California Environmental Quality Act, which is a different law. So it was legal for them to do this, but clearly in contravention of modern standards of how we think about climate change, and indeed the legislature's intent of how environmental issues should be evaluated. And that sort of old analysis, refusal to acknowledge the impact that their decisions have on real people, on the climate, is one of our concerns that we raise in this report. So we have a number of recommendations for reform. There are 6 of them. I will list these. Amend the density bonus law to require its implementation in the coastal zone. The legislature asked nicely about 6 years ago in 2018 that the Coastal Commission harmonize the density bonus law and the Coastal Act. There was no change in behavior. And so I frequently ask in talks when folks can talk back, does anybody know what harmonize means? Of course, nobody knows what harmonize means. But the Coastal Commission has effectively, and there's an example in here, decided it means nothing. So it's time to stop hoping and start saying that they need to implement density bonus law in the coastal zone. Number 2, remove or narrow special exemptions that keep existing statewide housing reforms from applying in the coast. This is things like your ADU law. Similar to density bonus, every other jurisdiction in California needs to obey these rules, except the coastal area. And we should treat them the same way because that's where the crisis is the worst, and in many ways where the crisis comes from. Number 3, mandate procedural reforms of the commission. Senator Blake Spear's 1092 in its original form would have done that. The Coastal Commission opposed mightily and successfully, lobbying directly against changes to their rules, including speeding up and making clear timelines. Number 4, apply transportation and climate policy to the coastal zone. We would recommend, for example, making it so that sort of analysis I mentioned earlier that prefers car traffic over other forms of transportation that is not allowed for CEQA be not allowed for other sorts of analysis in the coastal zone as well. Number 5, as I mentioned before, there are some in our statewide housing laws, there are exceptions. When we create those exceptions for the coastal zone from our housing laws, we need to make sure they are narrowly tailored for the goals of the Coastal Act. Right now, you'll see in some of the density bonus examples, they say, oh, well, our environmental concern is that there's massing and scaling, that there's views of the ocean. Nobody can see the ocean from a mile away from the beach in Venice. Nobody's view of the ocean is blocked by that Pisani Pace project, but that was one of their concerns there. So when we say environmental concerns, we need to say encroachment upon wetlands. We need to say something about our coastal, specifically what our problem is, because if you just say environmental, they have taken that to mean anything. Yeah, they have functionally taken it to mean you can't build housing. Look skeptically on commission demands for more authority. The commission demands we've seen just recently, they say, well, if we just had authority to require affordable housing, this would all be fixed. Well, what they're really asking for is authority to say no to more projects. They want authority to require affordable housing. Density bonus is already it, and they resist that. There hasn't been enough housing built in the coastal zone for 40 years. And if they want to go back and look at that 40 years and say, we would have put more restrictions on what was built there over the past 40 years, we would have gotten more success, it simply doesn't bear true. Now, if you look at the Coastal Commission, what you'll find is a structure of 12 voting members. 6 of those people are by statute from the coastal area. Now, they're supposed to be protecting coastal access and the environmental heritage for all Californians. Half of them are by statute required to be usually elected officials from the coastal areas. Those folks are necessarily responsive more to their housing resistant constituents in those coastal areas than they are to people in the rest of the state. As a practical matter, those other 6 people that are not statutorily required to be from the coast usually are. And they face the same sort of incentive problems. So what we see in the Coastal Commission is an organization with a great mandate and a great purpose that is not living up to that mandate and purpose, that is behaving more like a housing resistant local jurisdiction than they are like a statewide entity that is charged with protecting all of our access and all of our coastal heritage. So that's the report. We are hoping that it is taken for the spirit of improving the Coastal Commission. This is not an attack. It might feel like one, but it is not. The title of this report is A Better Coastal Commission. We want the Coastal Commission to do better. And if that's not going to happen, then we're going to have to make the Coastal Commission do better with legislation. Colin?
Great. Thanks so much, Will. Yeah, so we're happy to entertain questions. If people want to put questions into the chat box, we'd love to entertain them. Here, let's, looks like
No, take off screen share if you're not
to
using it. There you go. That's a good,
yeah.
that's a good point.
I'm going to unmute Tran and field a question.
Hi, thank you so much for doing this. This is Tran Nguyen with the AP in Sacramento. I wonder if your organization has attempt to essentially tally up how many housing units that has been denied or blocked by the Coastal Commission in the last, say, 5 years, since the state really started to escalating the housing production. Wonder if there's any efforts to tally that number.
Yeah.
Anything
Yeah.
you could.
Yeah. Tran, we haven't done a complete total of all those things, and that's going to be Will's next report. Surprise, Will. But
let me
But just to clarify, like prior to this report, one of the things that we were hearing often from the Coastal Commission when people would raise some concerns about housing production in the coast, that they would say, that we've always approved every project. We've never denied a density bonus project. And the purpose of this report is to really show that that's not true, and that there's quite a number of circumstances where the commission has either delayed or denied some of those projects. It's not inclusive of every project that they've considered, but I think it's a substantial number, and I think helps demonstrate that. I think the other piece too to understand too is that it's none of this can capture what might have been otherwise, right? So if the system were more predictable and fair and less arbitrary, presumably there would be more proposals, but they don't happen because folks understand that it's very risky and unpredictable as to whether or not a project is going to be approved.
Yeah, I will add a little to that. It is virtually impossible to measure that which does not happen. And what we find when we talk to developers, the folks who actually create, build, and conceive these projects, is that they, by and large, unless they are specialty coastal developers, refuse to even attempt to do business in the coastal zone because of things like a 4-year delay after you've already had your project approved, or unclear what those reasons are going to be in advance. And so what we find, probably the best way to look at that would be to say, well, what does the coast look like versus the areas right near it? And there is information, there are studies cited in the report that say that it's substantially more expensive in the coastal zone to live in just over that regulatory boundary than it is 100 feet on the other side of it. So there's not really a good way to say what didn't happen, but we can say what does happen is more scarce housing, harder to afford housing, and more segregated housing.
Thank you for that question, Trent. Any other questions? Well, seeing none, just want to thank again everyone for participating in this and for talking with us about this report. Our contact information is available both on our website and in the press release that was sent out earlier today. Happy to have further conversations with folks as well. We really, for those of you who are not familiar with Circulate, we do a lot of work with the press. We try to be a good partner, and so that we can help people do their work and cover the issues that we're trying to get covered. So don't be shy about reaching out if we can help you in your efforts to cover stories related to this and other issues. So with that, I'll thank everyone, and hopefully people can have a little bit of time to grab lunch after this. Thanks, everybody.